Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today we're going to work on an Okuma Magna Pro. It's an MA45DX. It's a saltwater fishing reel with a line counter on it. The line counter is working. Fortunately, that's very good. And looks like we even got a dead bug in here. So it's probably been sitting on the shelf for a little while. It's time for a tune-up. And we'll show you how to take this apart, tune it up, and put it back together again. So I normally would pull a schematic, but I can't find the schematic for this one. But the Okuma series is kind of one of these you can fly by seat of your pants on if you've done enough of these. So we'll see how good the flying is today. We're going to take the external parts off to start with. That involves removing the handle set screw and the handle set. And then we're going to remove the handle nut and the handle tension washer. And at this point it's a good thing to point out a couple of things. I use a parts tray for all the pieces and parts I take off the reel so I know where to find them. I take pictures. I'm taking pictures with the video right now so that if I get lost along the way I can find my way back by reviewing the video in this case, but you don't need to take the video. You can certainly use a cell phone camera, digital camera, heck, even go use film if you want. That'll take pictures at critical junctions when you're taking the pieces and parts off, and that way if you get stuck you know where to come back and find them. We have a star adjuster and then we have the bearing right underneath it. So I'm going to stop there and we're going to take the case off next. The case has got Phillips head screws, so we'll go ahead and do that. And while I'm doing that I want to thank all of the frontline folks that are helping to fight this pandemic. As I continue to try and do these pandemic projects, my thoughts and prayers are with you. I hope nothing but your safety, and I thank you for all of your efforts as you're trying nursing those back to health and keeping the rest of us healthy. And that goes out to all, whether you're involved in a hospital, in a long-term care facility, in a clinic, in a first responder role like an EMT or police or fire. All of those well-earned and deserved thank you for all that you're doing. Okay, you'll also know I'm wearing a protective glove on my hand. That's to keep chemicals and junk off of them to the best that I can. And we're going to get ready now to take the side plate off and go and do the service. So as I mentioned, we have a bearing here. The rest should just come right off. And unless you have a broken line counter, leave that alone. It's nothing but trouble. You have a little gear here, that's where the line counter rides off of. It's being driven by the other side of the level line guide. And again, if it's not a problem to you, don't make it a problem. Underneath here, interestingly enough, we just did a Shakespeare reel. And that Shakespeare reel was a Tidewater. And then we did a couple of others, and they all share a similar setup to this. Even though this is an Okuma, the Shakespeare and the Okuma are very similar in nature. So if you watch my video on the Shakespeare reel, the Tidewater 30L, then you're going to find that this one is almost identical, and we were kind of referencing that during that video. So stick around if you want to see more of the same, and we'll take you through that. So you want to pull these three first. These are the bridge screws. I just took the one off of the jack, and right now actually I'm going to grab my pick and I'm going to pull the spring off that anti-reverse dog there as well. I don't want to risk that thing shooting as we move too much further down the line here. Okay, I've disconnected that. Alright, we're going to take the three screws off here, and then you have a screw in the middle right here that's holding everything else together. So I'm going to take that out. So I was working on a reel for Danny. It was a Shakespeare Tidewater, and it had a bad drive in it, but idler gear. It was causing the reel to act funny, and we showed you in that one how to replace that line guide. So I don't know what the relationship was there. with between Okuma and their manufacturer and the manufacturer of the Shakespeare line, but these are darn near identical, and I believe that the parts are interchangeable should you need those parts. Okay, we've taken all that out apart, but I'm going to take the last screw here, which is the screw for the bridge assembly. If I can, I'm going to need to put the handle back on to hold that, because when we go to reinstall, we're going to want to have that screw out. Probably would have made sense to take it out first, but that's okay. There's going to be a bunch of parts that are going to fall out behind this. And just take your time. Don't force anything. And again, this is a good place to take pictures. There's nothing here going to spring out, but there's going to be a lot of pieces and parts all over the place. Here, this is your dog and your little stud, back of the bridge plate. Pull this out, have your bearing and your spacer, and then we're going to have your main gear on this side. So always helps to take a little breath. We had the spacer and the bearing, and then we have a little flat washer that goes there. And we have a set of the internal washers for the main gear. And then we have our stud here. So let's just take a look. These are Carbon Tex. This one is anyway. So nothing much to do here in terms of the actual drag washers. Yeah, we have Carbon Tex drag washers in here. These are fine, and you don't need to lubricate these. You can, it's optional, but Carbon Tex will tell you either way you don't need to lubricate them. All right, we're just going to leave that one nestled in there. We're going to check the teeth on the main gear to make sure they're all uniform and not cracked or chipped or dented in any regard. And I know you probably hear me say that enough, but it happens enough that you don't want to go and spend a lot of energy rebuilding the reel only to find out that you've got a drag or a grind or something because something's amiss. All right, so you have the hard washer, and you have the gear. First of the drag washers, which is the broader one. You'll see it's got a bigger hole. Then you have the first of the metal, which is round. Then you have the next of the fabric washers, and then you have the eared washer that always sits in the middle. Then you have the last of the hard washers, and then you have the thickest of the round ones goes up top. On this you have a trip mechanism. It sits on a little stud here. You need to make sure that it's properly seated on that stud. It's an oblong. Make sure that it's seated properly. And we have the little shim washer that goes between the two. And that just gets seated on here and set aside. Of course, I put them in. I probably should have threaded them through the main post. That would have been helpful, but I didn't, so do it now. Okay, so that's the main gear assembly, and we had that one washer kind of sitting off to the side there. And actually we can put the whole stack on there. You had a brass bushing was next, and you had the bearing. So we want to test the bearing, make sure that it's working okay, and it is. We're going to give that a good drink of oil. It's probably been a while since it's been oiled. And then we can just sit that right on top of the stack there, and we're just going to set that off to the side. Bridge plate is okay, dog is okay. So all we want to do then is clean the internals of this before we reassemble. A little bit of junk and dried grease here, not a big deal. And we'll just replace, that's a little brass holder for your spool there. A little bit up top here on your eccentric. The spring looks in good condition. Drop of oil on the line counter mechanism. And we're ready to install. So you take the base assembly that we just put together and you just nestle that in the front. Make sure that it seats properly as you go through the side case, and just hold that down. Next up then is we lost our 3 internal pieces there, not a big deal. Next up then, we want to put the yoke assembly in. We have the 2 springs. We have the yoke. Just going to clean that off with a piece of towel. Reapply some grease to the shoulders of the yoke. Get the main or the pinion gear. Going to do the same. We're going to check the teeth as we're putting some grease on. Making sure that that works fine. And it is. That would go in next. Once you load that up, you can put the trip lever back on, the jack. So you need to press that down and hold it in place. And there's a small screw that we had in our parts tray there. And me and small screws don't get along very well. These are nice reels. They're dependable. They've been around a while. Like I said, it's almost identical, if it isn't identical, to your Shakespeare Tidewater series. And if you have a Tidewater and you're having trouble, you may be able to pick up the part from Okuma, because a lot of these appear to be interchangeable. Okay, we loaded that up now. Next up then would be to load the anti-reverse dog. That's this little guy. That one rides on a stud. So you're going to position this over that hole and place the stud in. So that it sits like that. Now at this point it's optional as to whether you want to attach that spring or not. If you want to give it a go, you're welcome to. I generally wait until I put the bridge plate on, but what the heck, we'll give it a try here. Doesn't hurt to see if we can't get it nestled in first. And that's generally why I wait on this. I just I'm using a pick here. I'm going to load that down. I just pulled the dog out of the position, but that's easy enough to pull that back into position. Alright, I have the screw set, so now I can take that dog, pull down on that spring. And that's the way that the dog rides. And then we can take our bridge. You want to line up the bridge over all of the pieces. So now I have the stud here. I have the 3 screw holes. I have the screw for the main bridge. And that's the one I'm going to put in first, because that was the one we took out last. I want to make sure that the gear assembly is sitting properly before I go screw down the rest of it. There we go. Now I can take the 3 flat screws. And again, if you had any question, you can go back to your pictures at this point. And you can notice which ones were which. Let's say you had a question about, did the flat ones go there or the round-headed ones go there? Easy enough to get these pieces and parts confused as you're rebuilding these things. Yep, had to stop for a parts delivery. Okay, the 3rd screw goes in then. And this whole gear side assembly then is done. There's a little bit of dirt on that pinion gear, just want to clean up. Okay, so then we can put these pieces that fell out back in. Little tension washer. Bushing, bearing. Star adjuster. And you can see how everything is turning properly there. checking the anti-reverse, making sure that it's working. And it is. Okay, so now just let's see if we can get the spool out on this side. We can. We have a little stuck bearing on the spool here. We'll get that off. That's just got a lot of dirt and junk on it, so let's wipe that down. And sticking usually means that it hasn't had a drink of oil in a while, so let's go give that a nice coat of that. Now this is kind of a uniform case, but you have everything right here. You don't need to take the side plate off unless you want to, or unless you need to replace the parts. You have a plastic clicker and a click tongue that looks like it's in good condition. I'm going to check the idler gear now. That turns the worm gear. And I just want to rotate it so that I see that all of the teeth are uniform, that there's no chips or cracks. And back to that other one that we just did, there was a worn idler gear that needed to be replaced. All right, we're just going to clean off that tip, clean off the residue that's sitting on this side of the spool shaft. While we're at it, we got a little bit of dirt underneath here, so I'm just going to hit that quickly with some WD-40, penetrating oil. Just run a little bit of a steel wool through there, see if I can't break up some of that dirt. It's always easier to do that with the spool out. We're okay there. This reel looks like it's been pretty well used. It's got a lot of UV on it, so I don't know if it's used or just sitting on the boat a lot, but regardless, there's a good amount of UV on there. And then I'm going to grab the brush again, put a little bit of grease there, which is where it was sticking, and a little bit of grease on this side. I'm going to reseat that spool. Turn it to make sure that we've got the line guide turning. We do. I'm going to move that line guide all the way over to the side so that I can service the pawl. Grab that. Just want to turn that counterclockwise to take the cap off. Then you can just put a drop of oil in there to lubricate up the pawl. And then we can put some oil onto the worm gear. Questions come up about should we use oil or should we use the grease for that worm gear. I always prefer that we use the, just trying to make the case here. Not quite there. There we go. All right, nice snap there. So I don't use grease, generally speaking, on that worm gear because if it dries, it's more difficult for the line guide to move. So that's your prerogative. I'm not going to say that there's a right or a wrong answer, but I prefer the oil. And the problem with the oil, if you will, it will evaporate quicker. So you just need to give it a little squirt every now and then just to keep that piece lubed. Okay, we're coming down to the point where it's going to be a test to make sure that we've got this thing working properly. One more. Okay, that would be that part. Now we've got our handle. If I recall, we had that on the leverage side of this. Oops. It's the beauty of a parts tray. There's a little tension washer that goes underneath. Handle nut. 10mm nut to tighten it up. Nut cap. Now, generally speaking, if you have the flat side pointing towards that hole, you get a good alignment for the set screw, and we do. that set screw in, and this reel is essentially ready to go back fishing. So let's just tighten this one down, give it a turn, see how we're doing. Make sure everything's working. Tighten down the star drag and give it a go. Look at that. Nice. Nice reel. Give it a spin. Line counter's working. There you go. So that is the Okuma Magna Pro MA45DX. So if you have one of these, you now know how to take it apart, service it, and put it back together again. If you have one of these, like Rob did, and you don't want to do it yourself, and you would like to have somebody do the service for you, then by all means you can get in contact with me. I do provide the service by mail, and I would be happy to work on your reel for you. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.